Hello, hello, and welcome, beautiful soul sisters. I'm so happy that you're here. This is a space where we remember what it means to be wild women walking upon this earth, exploring that which is often unseen and unspoken. Together, we practice using our voices and the ancient ritual of storytelling, connecting about all that unites us as we share our stories of birth, life, and death. Today is Tuesday, May 28th, 2024. The moon is currently waning, moving towards a new moon in Gemini on June 6th. I'm currently located in the foothills of Mount Spokane in eastern Washington on 10 acres of land that we're caretaking. It's currently a little cloudy and drizzly outside today. If you would like to see our faces as we share, you can watch this episode on Earthing Nova YouTube. It's a little bit after 9 a.m. Pacific time where I am. I am super honored to have Chaya Lieba here with me today. We connected on the Freebirth Society membership through posts and a brief call that I led in that space. And I'm just, so excited to have you here today, Chaya Lieba, and hear your stories and have them shared in this space. I would love for you to take a moment and introduce yourself in whatever way feels good to you here today.
Sure, yeah. So thank you for having me here today. I'm excited to be sharing some of my stories. And I am a mother of 5 children who I get to raise in my home, and one little girl that I lost last summer, and 2 early losses. That's the gist.
Can you share where you are in the world for people?
Sure. Yeah, I live in Israel. It's a little bit, it's almost nighttime here. It's a little bit after 7 at night, so quite a time difference. It is getting quite hot here. I live in a really nice, small, quiet neighborhood that I appreciate and that I have nice community with. Um, and my kids are ages 2.5 to 7.5. But that would also next.
Beautiful. Yeah. Did you always know you wanted to be a mom, or how did that journey begin for you?
I guess it's pretty like I didn't think about it too much. It was pretty part of my culture that was kind of the inevitable thing. I actually do remember like a few days after I got engaged, I got together with my husband's family. I was talking with my future sisters-in-law, and one of them said, "Oh yeah, like 2 weeks after my wedding I was pregnant." And I was like, "Oh my God, that happens? That's how that works?" I don't Obviously I understood that's how that works, but it was the first time it dawned on me that like that was going to be happening. And it took, I remember, a few days for me to like process that, like, oh, that's like a thing. um and then once I like kind of adjusted to that, then I became very, I think, excited about the like potential, like about motherhood becoming a part of my life, and rather quickly kind of fell into like that becoming such an important part of my world, because right from the beginning I was like, oh my gosh, when is it going to happen? When is it going to happen? When is it going to happen? And then I got pregnant, and then I had an early loss, and then I got pregnant with twins. That was just my whole life then. So so
Oh, twins. Yes. And how did that pregnancy go?
so totally fine, totally uneventful, except like personally for me, one thing that was very, like, I felt like it was actually an extremely transformative pregnancy, but almost like in a really sad way. I feel there was this real I never had, at that point I never even heard of a midwife before. So I started immediately looking for a doctor to see, because that's what you're supposed to do. And every doctor I saw, when I looked them up, specialized in all these really bad things, and in all these publications on all these really bad things. And it was like the puzzle pieces started coming together that, like, this doesn't sound right. I'm like a young girl with no health issues. Why would I need a doctor who specializes in all these problems? So that's when I first came across the idea of a midwife. Um, but even though I went to see a very medicalized midwife, I really got indoctrinated into this mindset of like your body is broken. So I actually had a real I get in all my pregnancies pretty much I've gotten I mean not pretty much in all my pregnancies I've gotten pubic symphysis pain, and
Mm,
I didn't learn what that was until my third pregnancy, because the first two, I was told it was sciatica. I was told this is what it's like to be pregnant. I was told wear a maternity belt and sorry. And it just sucks to be pregnant. And that mindset of like, it sucks to be pregnant. Sorry, like do what you can do, survive, maybe try a chiropractor, was so, I think, part of that like really unhealthy mindset around birth, that
mm,
like birth is a medical problem. It's an illness. There's something wrong with you. And in my third pregnancy, I finally ended up by this chiropractor. I have no idea how, but she really changed things for me because she was the first one who explained to me that this is pubic symphysis pain. And it's because of like strength in your lower body. And it's because of a separation. It's because of hormones. But the way to prevent this really is with strengthening your lower body. And this is a sign that your body is not strong enough. This is an indication to you. This is a signal to you of what needs to get better and stronger. This is not a sign that you're sick. This is like the pregnancy just kind of like shows you what's real. And so it was, that to me was like a really transformative thing. But yes, the twin pregnancy was very much about that, ultimately culminating in, well, your babies are breech, so therefore you need to have a C-section. And I was like, and that was to me like the end all of everything.
mm,
You
mm-hmm,
literally are going to tell me that I'm this perfectly healthy young girl and
mm-hmm.
I need to have a surgery, a major surgery, because of something that's not a medical problem. And I could not wrap my head around it. And I just didn't figure it out like in time, I would say. Um, like now looking back, it's painful to like that I didn't just birth at home, but I didn't like even, it didn't seem like an option. I didn't even
Yeah,
think of
like it wasn't in your awareness that that was a possibility at that time. Yeah.
somebody at like the very end mentioned that they heard of a woman in Maryland. I lived in New York at the time. They
Uh-huh.
heard of Maryland who had birthed breech twins at home. And I was like, wow, how does that even work? Like it just was so not. And I called every practice across New York and everybody said they couldn't take me. And
Uh,
basically like it was
yeah.
too late. And I pushed it off. I actually didn't have the surgery till like 39 weeks, which is like unheard of. That was because I just kept pushing them off.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I was not having this surgery that I did not need, because clearly, if breech is a medical problem and I'm healthy, then my baby's gonna flip. And she did not. So there we were. Um, so that was that pregnancy. Pretty much was
So
like
then
just
you did have a C-section, and then your initiation into motherhood in this way. I know you had a baby before that died, you said earlier on, but then, and that is one initiation into motherhood. And then you had this next one with having a C-section and then caring for these twin babies.
yeah. And I was in school for my doctorate at the time, so I
Oh,
was busy with like that, but also like adjusting to motherhood and all that at the same time.
wow.
Uh,
You were pursuing a doctorate in what? Do you mind
yeah,
sharing?
I'm a clinical psychologist.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
So I was working in a hospital and classes and dissertation and all the fun stuff. So that's
Were
all they have.
you supported at that time? Did you have people around you, or was that just like,
So I
I
lived
can't
close to my
imagine?
family. Yeah, no, I lived at the time close to my family, which was very
Mhm.
helpful in adjusting. And I had really I have very, very good friends. So I'm very grateful for that. I would say unfortunately, I actually like had been very close with my cohort, my class, small classes. But like through this process, something happened that like they couldn't under like they could not understand why I was like needing so much more when I had been so, I think, like giving earlier on in the program, and then like needing so much and like taking such a step back, and that was really painful for me. But I think part of that was like also learning that um people aren't always able to give you what you need, and I don't blame them. Like I understood why it was confusing for them, but it was also painful for me that I lost that. So
Yeah.
not very well supported in the program. There also was a lot of like, you should just take a year off. And I was like, do you realize this is, as far as I understand, this is not a problem that's going away. Probably there will be more babies after this. So that was my mindset of like, why would I take a year off? How's that going to help me? That's just, they're just going
Yeah.
to and need more. And I might be pregnant again. So I didn't see that as helpful.
Yeah.
And yeah, I didn't see that as helpful. And there wasn't much to do about the amount of schoolwork. It was like, this is it, take it or don't take it. And my husband was really upset about that because he was like in Israel, you get 3.5 months off. What is this like? You get no time off. And I was like, wait, when you're a student, you have no privileges. so, so it's like do it or drop, you know? So
So
yeah.
you persisted, you continued, and then, yeah, how long after were you pregnant again with your next little one?
Yeah. So I was told I needed to wait a year because of the C-section, which also like upset me. Like, okay, now now you're telling me you broke me. Like, let's just be honest about what you did. So that I was pretty upset about that, but okay, fine. And I did use the mini pill. I was not really educated about birth control at all, at all, at all, at all.
Mhm.
And I was just told, like, oh, your nurse saying you need to go on the mini pill. Here it is. Take it. Like nothing, like no more information than that.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, 2 weeks after I started rapidly gaining weight. I gained 100 pounds in like 4 or 6, less than 6 months, which was completely insane. I said I had more stretch marks from that than I did from my pregnancy.
Wow.
I really I think I was so, I didn't like, I still was in this mindset of like, I'm broken and the medical system is not, because why would it be? Like, I didn't really get that yet.
Right.
Um, so it must be that I'm like doing something that's making me gain this rapid amount of weight, but I couldn't put my finger on what because I wasn't doing anything really dramatic. Um, and yeah, that was insane. And but it worked. I didn't get pregnant for about a year. And when I went off of it, I thought like it would take, when I went off it, I was basically just like, I'm finished with this whole system. This is wrong. This is just harming me and I need to stop this. And I went off. And by that point, it was like close to a year. Might have been like a little less or a little more. I don't remember exactly. And
Mhm.
then thought I would like take some time until I got pregnant. And then I got pregnant that cycle, which was really wild to me because as part of my religion is that we don't, like, men, like husbands and wives don't touch when the woman is bleeding and for a whole week after.
Okay.
So since that is the case, it is impossible to conceive, right? Like, you're with me, right? That would
Yeah.
be impossible, yeah, unless there's some kind of divine conception that I'm not aware of, but that would be impossible. And so I know I didn't conceive earlier than when I actually was able to go to like the ritual bath and restart relations. But the day I was supposed to go, I randomly started bleeding. No idea why. It's not a usual thing for me, but I randomly started bleeding. So I had to wait a whole nother week. So I
Mm.
thought, for sure, I'm not going to get pregnant this cycle. My cycles are usually very regular. There's no reason why like I would get pregnant at this point. So like, forget this cycle. Like, we'll see the next cycle, right? But then I was pregnant, and they kept on insisting that like my due date has to follow when my last period was. And I was like, you understand that logically that doesn't make sense, right? And they would not hear of
They were,
it, which
they
I
didn't
didn't.
they didn't trust you, then yeah.
No, they didn't trust me that, like, like if I didn't touch my husband, that means I probably didn't get pregnant then. Um,
Yes.
so I didn't really think much of it. Okay, fine. Like, they're like being ridiculous, but like, fine, make up a due date that doesn't make any sense. That's your issue. But then when I got to the end of that pregnancy, they were like, you're overdue. You're overdue. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? And I was like, I am not overdue. And I don't think I have to do anything. Everything feels fine. Um, so yeah, so that pregnancy was like uneventful, but I didn't like plan for a VBAC. I know people like get very into like planning for a VBAC, and I really didn't plan for it because I was like, again, in the mindset of like, I was perfectly healthy. There was no
Hmm.
C-section. I had the C-section, but I'm totally fine. And so
Hmm.
everything's be totally fine. Except now I also was 100 pounds heavier, but I still was eating well and like I didn't have anything wrong and like nothing I
Hmm.
was aware. So I just assumed I was going to have a VBAC. So I went to it. We had moved to New Jersey for my residency year, and I went to like a different midwife practice, and like not thinking anything would be the problem. And then once I was 40 weeks by their count, they started like harassing me for a C-section, and I was like shocked. I was shocked. I didn't even see it coming. I did not see it coming. It was a total bait situation. Like 40
Wow.
weeks, like, oh, sure, of course we support VBAC, blah, blah, blah. No, like, no, that was never going to happen.
Like
Even
they were
after,
never comfortable with it. They were just
oh, clearly it was never going to happen because it was based on nothing. Actually, at 36 weeks, they did an ultrasound. They didn't usually do ultrasounds. They don't at 36 weeks. And they're like, oh, your baby's breech. When do you want to schedule your C-section? And I was like, what? I was so good. 36 weeks, baby's still flip. What? And so they sent me to their covering doctor, and I like the next day, and I come in and he's like ready to do an ECV. And he's like, he doesn't quick for the ultrasound. He's like, oh, I'm amazing. The baby already flipped. And I'm like, no, you're not. Baby's flipped. Like, what? So then things progressed on until 40 weeks. And then they checked me and said, you're not open at all. You're never going to open. You have to schedule a C-section. So I was like, okay, you're all nuts, whatever. I'm like not dealing with this. So I just like went home and did a lot of like home induction methods, which you shouldn't do. That's lesson learned. But I like sat on a ball and I pumped and I took castor oil and I went to a chiropractor and I took also what's the other one?
like
Blue cohosh, black cohosh, and all the good stuff, right? And eventually, after 2 weeks of this, my water's released, and I started having contractions. So they said, "Oh, you're GBS positive, and you're a VBAC. Hurry, hurry, hurry onto the hospital." So I hurried onto the hospital, and I got there, and they checked me, and they're like, "Oh, you're only 1 centimeter dilated. You're never gonna dilate. You need to have a C-section." And I was like, what is happening? I don't even understand. So I was trying in the hospital to like walk and to like do different and to try to do something that could be helpful at that point. But they literally just harassed us. They even like the doctor screamed at my husband.
oh,
Um, he pulled my doula out and said, you have to convince her to have a C-section. They sent the head of the hospital to tell us that if we didn't have a C-section immediately, we had to just leave. And I wish I would have just left, but I didn't. It didn't even
wow. I
hit
know
me.
the
What am I going to do?
manipulation, the way they manipulate and sabotage in obstetrics, it's just yeah,
Insane.
it's understandable that you don't feel like you have a choice or that yeah.
Yeah. And it just didn't even, it didn't cross my mind. My waters are open. What am I going to do? Like go home? What am I going to do? Uh,
Uh,
yeah. So I ended up, after 36 hours of fighting with them, we finally gave in. And I remember, I'll never forget this. The doctor said, today's going to be a wonderful day. And I said, why? And he said, because your baby is going to be born. And I wanted to just say, ew, because he had spent the previous 36 hours, what he had said was, remember we're in New Jersey. He said in New Jersey, he said this to us clear as day. This is what he said. He said, in the state of New Jersey, you are not allowed to have a trial of labor after 2 C-sections. And you are not allowed to have more than 4, maybe 5 C-sections. So I said, so you just killed my future children and you want me to be grateful to you because my child is not in any danger? Please help me understand this.
and this whole concept of like not allowed, it's such an interesting the
Yeah.
language that they
I'm like
use.
allergic to those words now. I can't, when women tell me like, oh yeah, my doctor doesn't allow, I'm like, just please, I can't hear it. I can't hear it. Yeah.
So then you did have a C-section with this baby. Mm-hmm.
And she was totally fine miraculously because they saved her from absolutely nothing because there was nothing wrong. And I mean, nobody was even pretending like there was something wrong. Like there was no suspicion that there was anything wrong. There was nothing wrong. We all knew there was nothing wrong. So
It
what was
wasn't
the
an emergency. It was, yeah.
no, there was no emergency. I knew there was nobody even said there was an emergency. There was there was nothing was happening.
Yeah.
She was totally fine. Of course she was totally fine because why wouldn't she be totally fine? In any case, whatever. That was That was painful. That was I always felt like that was my most traumatizing, even though my other births I had very
Mm,
difficult. But
mm,
I always felt that that was the most traumatizing because it was like this real shock of like the I felt like the rug was completely pulled out from under me. I had like no control. I was completely shocked, completely blindsided. That was like the end for me.
mhm.
Yeah.
And
So
um were you awake for these C-sections? Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And they
And
tried to be nice. The funny, it's like a funny, insane thing to me. In the first one, I had like the family center, gentle cesarean with the clear drape, and I had like aromatherapy and music, and my husband there, and they put the babies on me right away after, of course, wrapping them and washing them and weighing them and everything else and cutting their cord. But yes, I had them on me right away in the operating room
right
with my
away.
hand right on me on my face because I'm like with a like
Yes.
sheet in my eye. Like, of course, this is really like, so gentle and wonderful as I can smell my flesh burning. Um, like whatever. And then
Oh,
then in the second one, they also tried to like be nice about it. It's just like you are harming me. You are actively harming me. And it's like kind of like an abusive like partner being like buying you roses. Like this doesn't help. You understand that. Um, yeah.
and did
So
they show you your placentas or any of that? No.
no, I didn't even think to ask. Like, I wasn't like aware of that.
Mhm.
But yeah. So
Yes. Okay. So then, and your twins are how old? And then when you have this newborn little girl.
so my twins were two, and then I have this new girl at home, and I'm in this residency year, and it was and oh, I had to make up every single hour I missed. So I was working like 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and pumping and the baby up and the whole thing. It was great. That was an intense year. I was like, I'll never work a 9 to 5 job again. And this wasn't even 9 to 5, but I just could not handle the like being
Yeah.
in place for so many hours in a row while being a mother. I just feel like it's not built for mothers, like the 9 to 5 thing.
No, it's not.
Yeah, that to me, that was like, I will never be able to do this. I think I had thought when I was a kid, like, oh, working a 9 to 5 job is so nice because you like leave work at work and then you come home. But and no, I cannot sit and do one thing for so long. Like I couldn't even figure. I remember like how to even like pay like the insurance company or whatever. I don't like whatever things you all had to call during the day. And I was like back to back the whole day. I can't deal with and I can't even my kid had to be picked up. Like one was, they were like whatever. I had to like deal with picking up my kids at various times and if one was sick and whatever. You just
Yes.
yeah. So that was special.
Wild.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
Finish that.
Is there
Um,
anything else you would like to that's important to presence about that?
um no, it was just a really challenging year and a really challenging transition. I think like right away, what was part of that is that so I was like very on alert that like, okay, make sure I like recover well, whatever. And then again told you have to go on the mini pill again, of course, because you can't get pregnant for a year. And I went on the mini pill and again had the same reaction, but even more dramatic. And so I was on it 1 month before I was like, I'm not doing this. So I went off of it and that's when I was told like you should try an IUD. And I had never heard of an IUD before. And it just sounded hard. Like you were telling me I need my uterus to heal for a year,
Right.
therefore insert a piece of metal into it to irritate it on a constant basis. Help me understand this. I couldn't like wrap my head around it. Was again like I had never heard it before.
Logical. It doesn't make
Didn't
sense.
sound logical, doesn't make any sense. I couldn't like wrap my head around it. Like even though probably people were like, if you've heard of it before, it doesn't sound as shocking. But this is my first time hearing of it, and I was like, this just doesn't sound right. Something sounds very wrong with that. So I said,
Yeah.
okay, well, stop. I'm nursing full time. Of course, I was at work, so I also was pumping. But I felt like, okay, but I'm around the clock. I mean, around the
Yeah.
clock, pumping and nursing,
Yeah.
and I'm only like 3 months postpartum. Like, what's going to happen, right? And we use spermicide. It's going to be fine, right? But of course, by the next month, I was pregnant. So, so I was like, so then I mean, my first reaction when I found out I was pregnant, I was like, this is not possible, God. Like, I can't. I can't. It's abundantly obvious that I can't. So this can't be possible. Um, and then after it settled a little bit, I was like, okay, I'm not willing to do this. I'm not being a participant in this insanity anymore. And so that's when I had met a local midwife. She had said like she couldn't obviously attend because I was past two C-sections, but
Mhm.
for a home birth. But I ended up speaking with this lovely woman who I spoke with many times after that, Nancy Weiner Cohen. I feel like I'm messing up her name. It's been a while. It's been a while, but I feel like it's Nancy Weiner Cohen, something like
Okay.
that. Like
Something
her
like
book.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, Cohen. Yeah, I'm right. I'm right. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's right. So she wrote Open Season and Silent Knife. And she according I don't know if it's I don't know if it's true, but she says she coined the term VBAC and she had the first VBAC in America. Um, yeah, and she's really cool. So I spoke with her a lot, and she told me about a couple like underground options, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this midwife with like the Amish in Pennsylvania, and then there's like another midwife in like upstate New York. Um, that's also serving like I don't know if Amish, but like that type of a community over there.
Mm-hmm.
Or there's a traveling midwife. I said, okay, well, I have work and all these other kids, and yeah, so let's try the traveling midwife. Um, that was my plan, and actually, that's how I found out about Free Birth Society. Eventually, later, not this pregnancy, but after,
Mm-hmm.
because my doula randomly, I really don't remember how I even found her. I looked into a few different doulas, but my doula was Isabella Malbin, who's an old timer in Free Birth Society. Um, so so she was my and that's when I also connected with that chiropractor who really like taught me a lot more, but just about like um the body like capacity during pregnancy and how pregnancy is more like informative than an illness. The
Yeah.
opposite, it's not an illness, it's like informative. It's like a chance of really like awakening us and showing us what's real. And so that was really helpful. Um, and I read every study that there was. I literally read every study that there is on, as everyone was like uterine rupture, of course, was like a big conversation. So actually, we don't I mean, at the time, this was in 2018,
Mm-hmm.
2019, 2019, 2019. So 5 whole years ago, it could be that there's more research since then, but at the time, there was no research available on actual increase in rates of rupture after two C-sections. We actually just don't know if those rates increase because we don't do it. So we don't know. And what was actually, something that was interesting is that in my second C-section, there was like a what's called like a window, meaning like the part of the uterus thinned out.
Uh-huh.
So I thought like, wow, I'm such high risk. But okay, clearly not, but whatever, we'll see. So what am I saying? So yeah, so I looked into all the research and I knew all the statistics, and I had this really nice chart that showed like risks, like percent, like statistics with each incremental C-section, and then
Yeah.
increasing risks with each incremental VBAC. And it was just like insane to see like your risk of like, they don't talk about this, obviously. They're just like, you need a C-section, right? But like your risk of hemorrhage and your risk of needing a blood transfusion and your risk of hysterectomy go up exponentially your risk of dying, your risk
Yeah.
of dying. But let's not talk about that because C-section lowers liability for doctors. So therefore, I mean, that doctor in the second birth, he said, I understand what you're saying, but my insurance won't let. And I was like, and I'm supposed to go along with this because your insurance won't let. Help me understand this. Um, so whatever. Basically, I just spent a lot of time that pregnancy on statistics and knowing every single bit of information, which I think was really to my detriment. I was not focused on like centering myself or my body or my baby. I was very focused on like proving that I was right
Right.
and all the information and being able to explain it.
Mm-hmm.
All the answers, which by the way, sneak peek, didn't help. Everybody hated me anyway. Not hated, but everyone was upset anyway. So even if I had all the information, it didn't
Yeah,
help.
they probably just felt confronted by it and fought against you for it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, you just sound crazy. And I'm like, but I'm citing statistics and you're telling me I sound crazy. So, but yeah, that was basically my experience.
Yeah. So then you hired a a traveling midwife. Is that what happened? Yeah.
Yeah. Keep
And
talking. I'm gonna go.
yes, great.
Okay, one second. I'll be right back.
Here we go. So you hire the midwife, and how does this birth unfold with her?
Yeah, so I really don't know what, like, I do know why. I it was my first step away from this system that I had only ever heard of. So I
Mhm.
really felt like I had to like do all the right things and check off all the check boxes and know all the information and have all the supplies and have all the right people. So I had the midwife, I had a doula, I had the chiropractor. I invited her to come also because she's amazing and like she was going to help me feel great. It's wonderful. Um, and it was like it was too many people, but I didn't realize that at the time. And and I had to like put her up somewhere, which was a little bit difficult to figure out, but somebody in my community was very nice to host her, which was really, really nice. And as soon as she came, something like seemed a little strange by her. Like, for example, she asked me to pick her up some alcohol. Um, yeah, she's an alcoholic. That became apparent and well
Oh,
known. Um, she also like stays in bed all day watching movies. It was very strange. There was something very, very strange about her, and I couldn't put my finger on it. And I started saying to Isabella, like, I think something's really weird with this woman, and something feels a little off. And Isabella, and I think this is just where like Isabella wasn't, but she said, I agree with you, but if you want this birth, like this is your best option. Like, and she was right. Like for the information I think the two of us had at the time, there was nobody else who was going to work with me. Like that was what it was.
mhm.
Not to work with me, but I didn't know that. So
Yeah.
that's where we were. And I didn't tell so many people about my plans because obviously, and I kind of like beat around the bush around it about it. And At 40 weeks or so, my waters released and contractions started nice. And then they slowed down and they kind of stopped. And I didn't know what to do, but I kept like monitoring for infection. Nothing's wrong. And I think on
Mhm.
like this, it was like after like 3 days that everybody around me really started to like panic. Not the midwife per se. She wasn't really doing anything. She was kind of like, do whatever you want. Like, it's not my business. Do whatever you want. Um,
Mhm.
but um, but certainly my everybody else in my personal life was freaking out. So I was feeling a lot of pressure, and I spoke to that original midwife who had introduced me to Nancy. Um, that first midwife, I texted her about the situation, and she's like, I don't understand why we're not doing castor oil. Like in her opinion, castor oil is like midwives, induction, like secret induction method, whatever. And she had like a whole like formula for it. Like I think it was like 2 tablespoons with like peanut butter, and then like 4 hours later another two tablespoons, whatever. And so I followed her protocol, took whatever, took the dose, and then whatever, a couple hours later, the midwife announces she's going to get dinner. My friends were there and like, we will feed you, please stay. And she was like, no, I'm just going to get dinner and I'll come back. And they like really pushed on her, and no, she ended up leaving. And my friend left, and the chiropractor left, and Isabella left, and it was just me and my husband. And then I felt like contractions starting to pick up, and I really
Mhm.
started to like not feel so great. And my husband's like, wait a second, aren't you supposed to have that second dose? And I said, yeah, but I don't feel good. Like I don't need it. I don't think I need it. I'm done. And he's like, but you're supposed to have it. And again, this is like that same mindset that's been there of like, you're supposed to have it. This is what you're
Right.
supposed to do. This is the information. This is like the
Yeah.
statistics thing, whatever. And so I took it and I went and I was like, I really don't feel well. I went to the bath and I like blacked out for a second, and I came
Mhm.
back bleeding, and we called the midwife, and she's like, oh, okay, I'm on my way back. And she, like we had to like stay on the phone with her, and took her 40 minutes to get back because she couldn't find my address. The taxi driver took us to the wrong place. I'm like directing her while this is going on. It was just so absurd. And in the meantime, my husband kind of like got Hatzalah is like Jewish EMS. I don't know how to explain that better, but like EMS, ambulance, whatever. He called, he had like
You in
told.
Israel for this birth at this
No,
time?
we were back in New York. We were back in
Okay.
New York for this birth, yeah. We were planning to come after I complete my postdoc and get licensed. So
Okay.
I was like close to that, but I wasn't done yet.
Yeah.
Um, so so this was at our apartment in New York. And so he called them to like be waiting outside. So they were like waiting outside. And as soon as she came in, she checked me and she was like, "You're 9 centimeters." Oh no, no, you're only 3. That's not usually a thing that's so
What?
confusing. She was out to lunch. She was totally useless. Totally useless. I mean, couldn't have been more useless.
Well,
Um,
not that it even, I mean,
it didn't
what's
matter, and it
that
wouldn't have
number
made
mean
a
anyway?
difference.
Yeah.
It didn't mean anything. And by the way, it did crystallize for me that like you were totally useless and I didn't need you there. And but it did feed a lot into like my husband's like she was crazy and she ruined everything. No, she didn't. She didn't do anything. But like it did feed that, that
Yeah.
belief that you needed the person to rescue you and she didn't rescue. But yeah. So then we let the ambulance workers in and they took us to the closest hospital. And what I also found funny about the story is we were so upset about how long the midwife took. So I'm pretty sure we called her at like 8 p.m.
Mhm.
And then she came at 8:40. And so we were
Mhm.
at the hospital before 9. And I did not go into surgery until 10:30. Maybe it was born like 10:36. And so I found like partly funny also. It was like such an emergency, but it took an hour and a half to have the surgery. It was such an emergency, but fine. So basically it was placental abruption. That's what it was. Um, and which I do, by the way, then read is like actually like after a C-section and with waters open, do not use castor oil. Fun fact, don't do that. So that I think is what caused ultimately the placental abruption was the combination of those factors. But yeah, don't do that at home, kids. Not recommended. But I think that's very not well known because everybody knows that it's like the midwife's secret induction method is castor oil, blah blah blah. But no,
Mhm.
don't do that. So, what happened? And another interesting thing was as I was going into this surgery, they wanted me to sign that they had permission to remove my uterus. And I was like, yeah, I'm not signing that. And then this nurse started screaming at me, screaming, like not negotiable. She was screaming. You mean to tell me you're going to leave 3 babies with no mother so that you can die with your uterus? And then I was like, and for some reason, my response was, wow, she really cares about me. I mean, just to show you, I think, again, this is like how this messed up system really messes, because I'm telling you, talk to women and they're
Yeah.
totally entranced by this insanity. And that was my response. I know I actually even had my husband later call her up so I could thank her because I really felt like she cared.
Mhm.
It's messed up. But that's what it was. So, yeah, so then I signed that and we went in and they're like prepping for surgery, prepping, and then they're like, oh, baby's crashing, emergency, and put me out. And baby was born with an APGAR of 1, and then she went up to like 7 after 5 minutes, I think 7. But that's like normal. So they said they're going to take her to NICU just for 1 day. Um, and then she had 2 seizures. So because she had 2 seizures, then she ended up being there for 8 days. And I was also very grateful because they had just gotten this brand new pediatric neurologist at the NICU in this hospital. And so he was like super on top of our case and he was doing all these tests. And I was like, wow, this is like so like divine that we ended up with this brand new doctor who's so motivated and so on top of our case. But really, I think there was actually some downside of it, which is that like 2 seizures in a newborn probably weren't that abnormal. And not that it's like a great thing, but like, so we ended up being on phenobarb for 6 months, which I really think led to, because she's totally fine. She's a wonderful, happy-go-lucky kid, but she had like a little tightness in her muscles. I don't remember as much as she's already 4.5, but we ended up because of her birth history, we got a ton of free physical therapy, so that was nice. Which was all virtual because it was Corona. So I learned a lot about physical therapy for newborns. But she ended up being fine. It just she like was like slow to like because of the tension. It made because of the weakness, muscle weakness, it made for a lot of tension. And then so certain things like it took her like longer to do
Mhm.
like in terms of her physical development, but then she like when they said like once she's walking, like you're done, everything's fine.
Yeah.
So that was fine, but then now she's still a little, her speech is a little slow. Like fine but slow.
Mhm.
So Obviously people would say, the birth, but I'm suspicious about the phenobar because that's supposed to really affect you or whatever. So I don't know. I don't know, obviously, what effect. It also could just be genetic. So there could be many factors.
Right.
But obviously like that, carries a lot in terms of that birth. Yeah, so that just carries a lot. That's just there. So that
Yeah.
was that birth. And then I agreed that now is the time to get the IUD. Because now I finally really knew I needed a break, which I laugh at because God clearly disagreed with me. But I mean, I knew before I needed a break, but now I for sure needed a break. And I was all like into that, like I'm gonna like heal my body. I went to like a naturopathic doctor and an herbalist, and I'm like trying to like figure out, and I went off gluten and I went off dairy, and I'm gonna like figure out the weight thing because the weight never came off. It never went up, but it never went down. So I'm like, I'm gonna figure this out, like what's going on here, and probably like thyroid and whatever. We're gonna figure this out. It's gonna be great. And I'm gonna like get in tip top shape, and we're gonna move to Israel finally, and I'm gonna meet every single birth practitioner in the entire country, and I'm gonna be like a marathon runner by the time I become pregnant again. It's gonna be great. Um,
Before
so,
we go deeper into this, would you like to pause one more time so you can, yeah. All right. So you felt like you needed a break. You decided you were going to have an IUD, and then take us from there.
yeah, so I'm like, I started seeing the naturopathic doctor, and she was like, yeah, your body definitely needs a break, and you can't get a hormonal IUD because we know we don't respond well to hormones. So you're gonna get the copper IUD. Great. Oh, and somebody told me, somebody told me speak to this midwife. I don't know why, but and it ended up being like awkward and there was no point in the conversation. But someone was like, you should totally speak to her. I spoke to this random midwife and nothing really came out of it, but she had said, oh, get your IUD at Planned Parenthood because doctors don't know what they're doing because they only do it like once in a while. But Planned Parenthood, this is what they do all day long. You should go to Planned Parenthood. Okay. So I went to Planned Parenthood. It was already March 2020. So my kids had to be all in the car. My husband was in the car. I had to like run in, run out, and yeah, the whole situation. And I get the IUD, and it's not, this is a very not pleasant experience, but okay, fine. And then a week later it falls out. So I come back and they do like an ultrasound before and after, and they give me the top person to make sure it's for sure placed perfectly. And she was not nice to me. I just remember. I don't remember. Okay, whatever. She was fine. Whatever. It was what it was. It's terrible. You shouldn't get IUDs. I don't recommend it, but fine. Whatever. Like fine. But I had the IUD. Good. This is good. This is what I need right now, and fine. And then it's Corona, and we finally moved to Israel, and good, fine, wonderful. We get here, I mean, and it was Corona madness everywhere. So we get here and like we had to be in seclusion for 2 weeks, and like people like showed up at our house to like test us. My kids like ran away. It was just horrible. I mean, it was insane. Totally insane. But okay, fine. That was that. And then we all got sick. So I figured it's probably Corona or some other whatever. And everybody got better, but I didn't. And I was really sick. And I remember saying to my husband, like, this is the worst nausea ever. And he's like, you've been pregnant before, isn't it? Like just like that. And I was like, no, this is way worse than that. So I finally went to the doctor here, because what I know what to do. I was just like endlessly really sick. And I go to this doctor and he's like, is it possible you're pregnant? And I said, no. And I didn't know you could be pregnant with an IUD. So he said, how do you know? And I said, because I have an IUD. And he said, you could be pregnant with an IUD. And I said, uh. um, so so he like took all this blood work, but I ran and got like 20 pregnancy tests and took all of them. Um, and I was very pregnant. Um, and I remember saying like I need like 2 weeks of mourning to like just to mourn that like I thought I was gonna have this time that I was gonna like heal, and now I'm not gonna have that time. And
Mhm.
what and also something I like struggled with in those 2 weeks was like, what do I what happened was there was also this chaos of like I need to get the IUD removed because it increases your chance of miscarriage.
Mhm.
So, but like and I confirmed the pregnancy by going to this, like they have like a maternity urgent care type of situation. It's like just for
Sure.
maternity. So I confirmed the pregnancy there, and then they were like, okay, we're gonna remove your IUD. And I was like, I am not ready for that, to do that here. So I called I actually because I'm a psychologist, somebody during Corona, this actually a woman who taught hypnobirthing. I had taken hypnobirthing in my first two pregnancies, for all that was worth. But and then I ended up becoming like very not into hypnobirthing. It's not, it's like the opposite of like intuitive, embodied anything. It's literally
Mhm.
like shut your brain off. So I'm not a huge fan. But I took this hypnobirthing, and so the hypnobirthing teacher reached out to me and said, you should give a class on like perinatal mental health issues. I was like, okay. So I gave the class and nobody came, or like one, I don't remember, very few people came. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, why did you ask me to do this? But she was like, you should speak to this woman who is like big on birth stuff in Israel. She'll like connect you with the birth community, and then you can like get into that stuff. And I was like, okay, I already have my niche. Like, I don't need to like develop a whole new field that's not like my main field. Like, I mean, it impacts a lot of the work I do because I work with a lot of women, but like it's not my main area. So I spoke with her once, fine. So when I was in that maternity urgent care, I was like, I'm gonna call Ayelet because she's the only person I know in all of Israel about birth, related to birth stuff. So I called her and she like talked me through it. And then she's like, you don't want to get it removed there. So leave. There's other people. So I left and I spent the next like 2 days calling every place to find like the nicest doctor possible. And finally I got into this nice, super nice doctor. Private pay, not in Israel, it's like socialized, but then there's private doctors, so you can pay a lot more. So private pay, yeah, we're gonna go, and it's gonna be great, right? And we go, and I like literally, I'm like shaking and crying when we even like walk in the room. And my husband says, like, we have a lot of birth trauma, like, please be very, very, very gentle with us. And he wasn't. He wasn't even remotely gentle. I like sat down on this thing, and I'm like looking at like stuff on my phone to distract myself with. And he like shoved my legs open. He's like, you're gonna have to open up wider than that. I can't even believe I permitted that, but yeah, I would never do that now. But yeah, he like shoved my legs open. And then he invited another person in without telling me. He didn't tell me, he just didn't ask this other person to come to just in case it was hard to get out, but it ended up being a breeze to get out. They took it out and then he threw it at my husband. And I said, I just need to know, am I going to be bleeding? And he throws a pad at me. Like again, this is not how you treat adults. I would be an adult, just for clarification purposes, in case that was confusing to anybody. Um, this is not how you treat people. I don't recommend throwing things at children either, but like you could also just answer with your words. But yeah, no, so that didn't happen. So I came home and there was like a drop of blood on the pad, and I just like leaned over the bathroom sink, hysterical. And I was like, and I remember, and I said, I am never letting anybody hurt me again. I'm like not doing this. I'm not allowing this anymore. The end. I'm
Mhm.
done. No more.
Yeah.
Um and so then yeah, so then that was like this 2 week mourning period, and then like deciding like, am I kind of like willing to like step into full ownership of this, and no matter what the consequences of that might be, I don't really know, like I don't know how to wrap my head around all that. And so I sat with that a little bit, and then I kind of just decided like I am birthing at home by myself. And I felt like a lot of peace around that decision, like okay, that's what I'm doing, like the end. And because I was doing that, I like really like exercised a lot and slept a lot and relaxed a lot and worked through a lot. Like I had to like work through a lot with it,
Mm.
but I did all of it. Like I did all that and I felt great. And and
And how was your husband in that scenario?
so
Felt like,
he wasn't like on board, but he wasn't opposed either at that point. He wasn't like fighting me on it, which was
right.
like the previous pregnancy. So that I think really helped because there wasn't like I wasn't dealing with that. I was just able to focus on what I needed to focus on.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful that I had that I was able to just like, even if he wasn't like on board, he wasn't also against. So I didn't have to be like dealing with it. So
Right.
that um and I had like told Ayala like maybe I'll invite you to the birth. But I knew I wasn't gonna invite her to the birth.
Mhm.
Um And I connected a lot with Yolanda during that pregnancy, Yolanda Norris Clark, and we met a lot, and she really helped me work through this. And
Awesome.
yeah, and so Rosh Hashanah 2021, so September, early September, um, I started having like some contractions, some sensations, but like nothing regular yet. And I had like 2 days of that. And then on the third day, I woke up in the morning and I was answering a client message. I remember so clearly. I was like on my phone answering a client's text, and all of a sudden, like boom, I felt like a boom. And then 4 minutes later, and I'm continue texting, and 4 minutes later, there's another boom, and then 4 minutes later, there's another boom, and it pretty much continued. I never felt it change in intensity or in frequency the whole day. It was just, I felt like it seemed to me. Obviously, I'm sure it did, but it felt like every 4 minutes, just like that. Yeah. And I went from the bed to the bathtub, the bed to the bathtub, that's the bathtub. And I called Yolanda several times, like I lost a mucus plug. There was some meconium. There was a little bit of blood at some point. I don't remember. Nothing like to write home about, but a little something. And I called her every once in a while throughout this day. So I think it started around like 6:30 in the morning. I just don't like the exact times. So I don't remember anymore. It was around 6:30 in the morning. And then this continued until 12:30 at night when the baby came out. At some point I did go into a pool, but the pool's on our like porch, which was like an enclosed porch, but they
Mm-hmm.
were like downstairs and they were never out. But for some reason that night they were out talking, and I couldn't handle the talking. And I would like
Yeah.
leave the pool mess. It's like, oh, I didn't blow it up hard enough. So it's like keeps like the water's gonna all spill out if you do that. And I was like, everybody be quiet. So the pool, I couldn't deal with it. So I was just bed, bath, bed, bath, bed, bath. And at some point I remember like not pushing, like my body, like people talk about fetal ejection reflex. I'm guessing this was that. The only reason I get nervous about saying that is because I actually did tear pretty badly. But my body like took over. There was like this,
Yeah.
I was quiet the whole day and I couldn't handle a single sound. My husband even tried putting on music and I was like, turn it off, no noise. It was totally quiet the whole day. He had sent the kids to siblings. Um, and he didn't want the kids around. He's like, I can't, he couldn't handle it. And I was like, it's not worth it. Like it would be nice, but not now. Um, and yeah, I just remember this significant period of like sitting on my bed on all fours, going like with this like really guttural like sound coming out that I remember feeling my throat after. And
And
then
your
there was
body was
baby.
pushing. And yeah.
That was just happening. I was nothing
Yeah.
active on my, I wasn't even aware. Actually, the entire day I remember thinking like this could go on for another few days. This could go on for another few days. That was like a constant thought by me.
Mm-hmm.
That tried to be with a lot of like calm, actually. I know people usually are the opposite, but for me, I needed to know that like I can handle this. I don't
Mm-hmm.
end ever. This can just go on
Mm-hmm.
for as long as it needs to, and I'm here for it, showing up all the way. I
Yeah.
also didn't feel any pain, which I like was it was my first birth, like it was my only birth. So yeah, but I didn't like I found it interesting that people talk about birth as being so painful, and I didn't experience pain, certainly like intense, like it was like big, but it didn't hurt. And I felt like that was really because I wasn't like I was moving into each and every sensation and going with each and every sensation. I had like no resistance to it. I was so happy to have each sensation and so grateful, and like you can keep coming sensations as much as you want for as long as you want, no problem.
Yeah.
Um, and then yeah, then at some point the baby's head came out, and I was on my bed. I have a floor bed, so I was on my bed, and my mirror was opposite me. My husband sees the head come out, and he flipped. He flicks the lights on. And he's like, "It's dead. It's dead."
Oh,
And I was like, "Shh." And then the baby's body comes out right onto my bed. And I
yeah.
pick, and he's gurgling. There's some like fluid in there, but he's gurgling. And I'm like, and I flip on my camera because I haven't taken a single anything. Flip on my camera, and he's gurgling, and I'm like talking to him, and like, and I'm like this whole thing, whatever. And my husband is still, he's dead. I don't know why but I do feel bad that I didn't ever like explain to him. Like it was so obvious to me that color was great, the baby was making noises. What was the problem? But to my
Yeah.
husband, until he heard a cry, this baby was not okay. Okay. So he actually called with Yolanda, which was funny because I've been calling Yolanda. He called Yolanda and he's like, our baby is dead. And Yolanda's like, everything sounds so wonderful. She could hear me and the baby. She's like trying to calm him down. And he's like, I'm telling you, my baby said, and you're saying everything's wonderful.
Oh.
So that was a special situation. And he was just really in a panic after that, which was unfortunate. Um, so he ended up like being on the phone, like calling people and trying to like figure out like, is everything safe now? We had like EMTs like come and look at me, and there was nothing to look at. And so I didn't get any nourishment. I didn't lay down. I didn't get anything to drink or eat. And I'm just like trying to be engaged in this like calming down process. And then I passed out. And so that when I passed out, that's when I called Ayala, and I was like, no, now I need help. So she came, and by the time she came, the placenta came out, and she settled him down, and she settled me down, and she settled the baby down, and everybody relaxed, and everything was okay. And that's pretty much
And
that
yeah,
was
you free birthed your baby at home after having three cesareans.
yes, in a very short period of time. Yeah, and it was totally the most uneventful and unexciting birth on the planet. Like I say, like there's no birth story. Like there's nothing happened. I like had sensations and then the baby came out. Like
So
nothing.
simple.
So simple. So simple. Like there
Yes.
wouldn't have even been the time when I would have thought to like get up and leave my house and go to a hospital. Like what, how did that even like I don't even understand how people do that.
Mhm.
Oh, that was that birth.
Placenta came easily.
No, because my husband was like, the placenta has to, because then he found out the placenta has to come out. You're not, and you're still in danger of the placenta coming out.
About
So
it. But
I was like, placenta has to come out, placenta has to come out. So I was like crouching and I'm doing all these things. And I didn't realize it had been literally 2 hours of me like trying to get the placenta out, like feeling and pulling, not pulling, like tugging and trying to feel around, crouching and doing this and this and this. And meantime, I'm like by myself, totally by myself doing this. And then and I'm seeing like blood is coming, and then I fainted. So when I woke up from fainting, I was like, okay, I need to do something. And I had shepherd's purse. I took shepherd's purse, and I remember that if you're hemorrhaging, you're supposed to eat part of the placenta, but that didn't actually make sense because in that moment, I just was like, I'm just taking one of these clots and putting it in my cheek because they said you're supposed to put it. So I just took a clot and put it in my cheek, and I took the shepherd's purse, and the placenta flew out. So I'm sure it was not the blood clot that helped. I clearly did not remember that in that moment. It's supposed to be a piece of the placenta for hemorrhaging, but whatever, something worked. Probably it was the shepherd's purse, or it just was time. I don't know. And the placenta flew out, and right after the placenta came out, that's when I like got there.
yeah,
So.
amazing. Yeah. Is there anything like what about was it distinctly different this postpartum than with the C-sections?
I mean, I was, as opposed to like, I mean, other than the C-sections, I was recovering from major surgery and from massive trauma. And this
Mhm.
birth, I was just like in this glow of like, this is amazing. But I did tear, I had like a secondary tear.
Mhm.
I ended up having like in order to like be able to like document your child, you have to like have a doctor's signature before and after, but like they don't do anything. They just have to like be aware that you were pregnant and that you had a baby and sign off on that. So I
Yeah.
had this doctor just like come to see me, and then I like asked him to look, which I like a little bit regretted after, like, what was I thinking? But I did just was like, I'm in a lot of pain. And so he offered to do stitches, and I was like, doesn't sound right. So I didn't do stitches. And I did like try to like lay and not move. And I did seaweed and I don't remember, but I really felt like until 9 months postpartum, I still felt something
Mhm.
in that didn't feel like it fully healed until 9 months. But after 9 months, I felt totally fine. So,
Yeah,
um,
yeah. I've had tears in two of my births, and one I had stitches, and the other one I didn't. The next one I didn't. I definitely preferred not have like the stitches wound up being a problem for me. So yeah.
that's what I kept hearing from you. I mean, in like the 2 minutes that I like gave myself to decide this, I just kept people were like, it's extremely painful. You could end up with problems from it, and I was like, so what's the main appeal here?
Wow.
Um, I've trusted my body so far. I think we'll go with that path. So even though
Totally.
it took time, so those early weeks that was a big thing that I was really like trying to not move, and that wasn't really well understood. Like I went to like in my community, it's common to go to a mother baby home postpartum because like you have kids at home and you go there and like they'll take care of the baby for you. They give you all your meals. It's like a hotel room, whatever.
Wow.
So I went there and I kept like saying like I'm not moving, and they were like, no, you need to like get up and move. And what I kept finding out that people told me that the reason is because after a C-section and after stitches, you do need to move. Um, so they're so used to everybody is like that
Yeah.
that that's what they say. And I was like, no, I'm really confident I have to not move. So that ended up being like a constant like battle in terms of that. But otherwise, no, it was amazing. Um, it was amazing. Um, I think people like were kind of expecting me to like I don't know, to have some kind of like to have some kind of conversation with them about like see like I was right, you were wrong type of conversation. Like people kept kind of saying like, wow, so you really like proved it, something like that. Something like that. And nobody was like pushing for it, but there was like this kind of like and I just kept like not feeding it. Like, I'm not having this conversation. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I don't have to prove anything. I don't need to explain it to you. Like, I gave up on that. But other than that, so it was what it was. And I just needed it for myself. And I don't need to like explain it to you. If you're interested, I'm happy to, but most people aren't. So that was that. Um, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm aware of the time. I know you have a client coming up and I want you to have some time before that happens. But what else would you like to share in this space? Would you like to talk about?
I think I can't not say my most recent birth. So yeah, so I'll share that. But yeah, that really obviously rocked everything. Um, so yeah, so basically I didn't have a good birth control plan, obviously. So I just didn't go to the ritual bath for 9 months postpartum, because I didn't know what to do, which was obviously terrible for us and just like dysfunctional for our marriage. Um, and and but I didn't know what else to do. So I ended up taking private like classes in fertility awareness method. And I had Queen Anne's lace on hand, and um and my first cycle using fertility awareness method, I got pregnant. And I ran it by 3 people who are all fertility awareness method teachers. And they were like, it is not possible that you got pregnant. Like, it is not possible based on your numbers. It doesn't make any sense. So I know what to do with that. Of
Things happen that don't make sense all the time. Yeah.
course, exactly, exactly. And so at 8 weeks, I had a miscarriage. And it was like painful to me. Like, I hadn't wanted that pregnancy. Like, it was another unwanted pregnancy. And then I lost my baby. And so there was a feeling of I was just frustrated with this. So the next cycle, I didn't know what to do. I just did fertility awareness method, and it did work that month. But then the third month, I was like, you know what? I'm done with this. I don't want to have an unplanned pregnancy. I want this pregnancy. I want to step into it in full consciousness. Like, I'm just really tired of this. And so I remember my husband saying, like, you're gonna get pregnant now, aren't you? I was like, probably, yeah. Um, and I did. I got pregnant. And that pregnancy, honestly, to me felt like the calmest because there wasn't all this drama of like what's going to be. I just was going to have a free birth, of course.
Yeah.
And I did plan more for like postpartum that time. I hired postpartum doulas because I wanted to be home instead of going to another baby home right away. Like, I wanted to like be home a little bit first more this time. And I didn't like expect much. I just was like, okay, cool, I'm pregnant. I didn't eat as well. I didn't take all the supplements I was taking. I didn't exercise. I didn't sleep enough, but I didn't think much of it. I did gain weight also that pregnancy. I didn't even realize really, but I did. And by the end of the pregnancy, I started having swelling in one of my feet. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's for sure a blood clot if it's like swelling in only one foot. And I tried to get a like your like a like an ultrasound of your foot like supposed to get, And like I couldn't get it. I couldn't figure out how to get it. I went to that maternity urgent care and they were like, oh, we don't do that test. But they were like fighting with me that like they needed to prove I was pregnant by doing an ultrasound. And I was like, see, no, you don't need to prove I'm pregnant because I am 9 months pregnant. So we don't have to prove that. And my blood pressure was a little bit high. It was like 140 over 90. And I was really surprised by that number, but also like I'm 9 months pregnant. So it happens, right? But the doctor was so focused. I had like done that number by the nurse and she said, bring it up with the doctor. I brought up with the doctor, but he was all just like fighting with me about the the need for the ultrasound or not. And I was like, but the foot, you look at the foot that I don't need you to confirm if I'm pregnant. I need you to look at my foot. And he wouldn't do that. So we left. And the only other option was everyone kept saying, everyone kept saying you need to go to a hospital if you think you have a blood clot. And I was like, right, but they're just gonna put me on blood thinners, which they're not gonna do because I'm 9 months pregnant. So then they're just gonna have a C-section. So I'm not doing that. So I stayed home and I rested my foot and I stood on my foot and I rested on my foot and I stood on my foot and I had a lot of bone broth and a lot of ginger and turmeric and then and I noticed a pain in my shoulder on Saturday night that seemed strange, like something I was trying to like exercise it out, but it wasn't going away. It's like seemed strange. And then on Tuesday morning, Monday night already, I was like, oh, I'm gonna give birth tomorrow. And like I just knew I wasn't even like really having sensations. I just knew. I went to bed early. I woke up in the morning. I had to get blood work done because we were closing on a mortgage, thank God. And so I needed to get that done. So I got all this blood work done. And again, my blood pressure was 140 over 90. And the doctor again said, again, like I didn't go to a doctor the entire pregnancy. I just went for the mortgage and I went for the blood clot, just like in the days before. So I went for this blood work and I was having sensations the entire time. But I was like keeping it a secret, smiling, like enjoying my little time. And I go and I get the blood work, get the blood pressure, and again the 140 over 90. And doctor's like, no, 9 months pregnant, totally fine. And I bought toilet paper. I like bought toilet paper, and I went home and I like called a local friend, just like just letting you know I'm in labor, just in case like I don't know anything, just so somebody knows. And I kept telling Ayala like, don't come, like I'll let you know when to come. Nothing's happening, whatever. And then I called my husband to come home because I was like, no, it's picking up. You should come home. And he came and I was like, oh my gosh, I was having like pleasure in my sensations, which is something I really wanted. And I was having pleasurable sensations. And then my water's releasing, my water released. Oh, I'm sorry. Right before the water's released, I felt like a little like kick that seemed like a little strange to me. And then I was like, oh, baby, like the baby just like kicked my cervix or something. Like I felt like a very strange, like boom. And I was like, I don't know what that was. And then my water's released. And my husband said, okay, I'm just turning on. I said, I'm going to the bath. Can you charge my phone? My phone was dead at that point. Charge my phone, let's call Ayala and get me something to drink. And he's like, yeah, sure. I'm just going to turn the light on and just see if there's any blood in the water. Because if there's blood, we can do the touching. Okay. So he turns the water on. He's like, Chaya Lieba, it's all blood clots. It's all filled with blood. And it was all these clots. And so I said, okay, well, still get the charger and get the water. He says, can I call this? There's a local female paramedic who had come after my son's birth. That like, cause my husband wanted him to like look at me, and she came and she like looked at me and looked at him and said, oh, you look fine, but sometimes babies die, so you should go to the hospital. And I was like, get out. So she left, but she actually bumped my husband a few months later and said she had a C-section. And now she understands me a lot more. I don't know what she meant by that. I don't know her at all. Just she had told him that. So he asked me in that moment, can I call her? And I said, yeah, call her. That's like a reasonable person to call. Female paramedic's not going to do anything. Like she's just going to come here, sit with me, talk to me, whatever. Fine. So while he was going to get the stuff, he called her and she said, sure, Mama, I'll be there in a minute. But also you have to call like the organization, just like let them know that I'm coming because that's like protocol. So he called and they were like confused why he was calling. So they sent an ambulance with two male paramedics.
Mm.
And Ayelet also sent her husband because he was closer. He was like closer to us. So he came also. And so the female paramedic sits down with me in the bathroom and I'm in the bathtub and she's talking to me and we're like looking at how much blood there is and trying to like, and looking at my blood pressure and like seeing how I'm feeling, and I'm feeling totally fine. And we're just like talking and I'm trying to like listen on the fetoscope and I'm like not getting it. And, but I hadn't used it a lot that pregnancy. So I didn't feel like I was like so adept at finding it anyway. And then these male paramedics come and I hear them screaming with my husband right outside the bathroom door and like fighting with him. And he's asking them to leave and they're not leaving and he's fighting. They're like fighting with him. So I just like look over out the bathroom door and I say, like just like this, I say, I'm sorry, I hear my husband asking you to leave and you're not leaving. If you don't leave, we're gonna have to call the police because this is our house. That's what I said. And then they said, well, we're just gonna say you're psychiatric. And I was like, I started laughing because I was like, I'm a psychologist. I work with high risk clients. I know that in this country, you can't barely hospitalize somebody who had a suicide attempt today. Like in America, you can do that. But here, if somebody had a suicide attempt today, and then they say, no, I don't want to go to the hospital, you can't even hospitalize them. You can't involuntarily hospital. You can't just say somebody's psychiatric because you feel like it. Like you have to prove it with like two psychiatrists from like different whatever. There's like a whole protocol. This is how you're going to prove that I'm psychiatric because of what? I didn't do anything even. Like what? So I like laughed and I like continued talking to the female paramedic and like focusing on myself. And then they come over to me and they leaned over me and they injected me with a sedative and they took me um out and I Yella called me at that point. She's like, I'm here. And I said they effing sedated me. Um and she was like, what? So she was right outside. So she actually like stood in front of the ambulance, like wouldn't let them pass. Um and she asked to come and they said, are you a midwife? And she said, no, she's not. And because she's not, just to be clear. And that because they ended up pressing charges, which was insane. And they said that she said that she was a midwife, which made no sense because they said that if she would have said she was a midwife, they would have allowed her to come as a medical professional. But as a friend, I already had my husband, so I couldn't also have her. So they also said she hit them, which I just find comical. Um, but okay, fine. Like we were all there. Like she didn't hit you. Um, um, but yeah, whatever. So I mean, they also called out to the hospital and they didn't tell them that they had sedated me. They just said I was unconscious.
That's okay
And so
with you. No.
which yeah, so I was like in and out of consciousness, and the whole time I kept thinking like, wow, I could really die now. Like I have no
Mm.
control of my body. There are people who don't have my best interest at heart who are in full control of my body, and I really felt like I could die. Like felt very very clear that like, and I felt a lot of peace around it. God, I'm in your hands, and whatever you want me to be doing right now, I'm willing to show up and do. And I just kept like repeating that in my head. I am here. It's time for me to die. Like, I don't know what that's fine. Um, and yeah, so we get to the hospital. I don't know. I'm in and out of consciousness. I just heard them say there's no heartbeat. And then I said, well, then there's no need for a C-section. And then I passed out again. And then I remember like them sticking like a mask on my face and saying like good night, good night, good night. Oh, and also I also I'm sorry, when we came in, I remember feeling like people just sticking their fingers up me and fingers and fingers. I just remember
Oh,
that. Like, why is that
oh,
even? I know, and when you say that to people, it's like, well, like of course, like what do you expect? And then I'm like, yeah, I expect again the like adult thing, like where I am an adult and you don't just stick your fingers inside of me because you have the right to because people sedated me and removed me from my home. So yeah, so the fingers, and then the ultrasound machine, and then no heartbeat, and then I said, no need for a C-section, and then they were prepping me um for emergency surgery because I was unconscious and they didn't know why. And woke up to that um to an unnecessary C-section and my dead baby. and I think like at first there was just like so much just like shock around my baby, like where's my baby, like there was this constant like where's my baby, and I was totally focused on that. Like I just was like feeling like so like lost, like a panic, like where's my baby, my baby's missing, my baby's missing, my baby's missing. um but it took me like really weeks until I started to like gain back just even like the shock of like what had happened. Like oh my God, like they legit could have killed me.
Yeah.
Um, they didn't like I was under double sedation. Um, um, but that
And
took like
were you able to hold your baby and like
yes.
did
Yeah,
yeah.
they gave me her and we took pictures and but I remember being very, very frustrated because I was still in out of consciousness because I still had this sedative uh,
Yes.
in me. And I remember just being very frustrated. I remember like I literally even said like I was like I can't do this because I'm falling asleep and like I need to be able to not be falling asleep right now.
Mhm.
Um, and being just very, very frustrated about that. Um, yeah, I was very frustrated about that. Like I need to be here right now, and I'm not because of this sedative that I didn't need. I wasn't
You
hurting
were
anybody.
given against your will. Yeah.
Whatever.
Yes.
Uh, yeah, so that was very, very upsetting. So I was with her a while. I don't know how long.
Mhm.
Um, Ayala was there and took some pictures for us, um, and then at some point, like, just said, okay, like that's I wish I would have said like, can she just stay with us for like a day? I ended up reading later of like a woman who had like who was in a hospital where they like encouraged that, and I remember thinking like I can't think I needed that, and I didn't even think of it. I just was like, okay, like I'm not awake and I need to just be asleep now because I can't do anything. So probably we were with her like an hour. I'm not sure. Um, um, I yell at after. She's like, you couldn't have been with her any longer, like from a perspective of like all the other people around, like they just would that was what it was. But yeah, then I don't know, a lot more little details, but that was that. And I recovered terribly. My my C-section never closed, my iron never rose. My iron still is not recovered. This was in June. My iron's still not recovered. Um they discharged me with a blood pressure of like 60 over 40, something insane. They were like, didn't first they don't because my blood pressure dropped and they tried to give me the iron infusion.
Oh,
Um, and then they were just like, okay, well, we don't know what to do with you. Let's go home. So I had like no blood pressure, my iron, and then my C-section never like closed. So I had like this open wound on my stomach for like 6 months.
wow.
Uh, yeah.
And so then you were grieving the loss of this baby, the death of this baby, while also mothering these other children that you've birthed before.
They were really ready for a baby. So that's been also very hard for them. Like they'll every time one of their friends has a baby, like even just a couple of days ago, my daughter came home and she's like, oh, I really want a baby. When are we getting a baby? And yeah, one of them told me like in prayers in school every day where they have like a private prayer time and she asks every day for a baby. So that was really hard. And just like explaining it to them. Um, was good. It was good for everybody else to like discuss it, each in her own way. But
Yeah, what would you like to share about, yeah, the grief experience? I know that like I saw or interacted with some of your posts and we were a part of that grief call together where we did the mover mirror witness and I'm sure there's lots of other ways that you
yeah, I found that movement um experience very helpful. I really liked that. I used also like some homeopathics to support me, that I found helpful, and some herbs that I found helpful. And I journal a ton and I talked a ton with people who are close to me, and it was really helpful. I actually had like a lot of like members of my community would like come over and just like listen and just cry with me, and like people like really listened to like my whole story. Which was helpful. And I think that those things were really necessary. I think there was also just like the first few days, like I kept like waking up, like my body needed to like nurse. Like I needed my baby. Like I wasn't like it was such a physically shocking experience. Um,
Mhm.
so so that was like a big transition just in the beginning, which is like the physical shock. And then eventually I had to go back to work. And like I just remember thinking like I cannot do this, but I also can't not do this. Like I'm not going to be more recovered in a few more weeks. Like I need like a year. So that was hard. And I found that like I just really couldn't multitask anymore the way I used to be able to multitask. I really could just like my brain didn't have any more additional space for anything beyond just like whatever I'm doing right now. I can only have capacity for this. Um, yeah, it was helpful talking with my kids, but it was also hard because I would be emotional a lot and they would be like, "Oh, we must still sad about the baby." So that was like sad, but also good. So, um, yeah, that was, I think,
Yeah.
I really couldn't tolerate like if I even like sensed that anybody like didn't get or believe my story anymore. Like I used to be able to like, okay, whatever, people can have their issues, but now I was like, you like I need to be understood. Um, like I wish I wasn't in that space because not everyone's gonna understand. But in that experience, I like needed people to
Hmm.
understand. And thank God I was so grateful that like again, like my community members who came to sit with me, like were really so understanding and supportive, which was amazing. Um, because I just needed that. I just needed people to like witness me and understand, like get it that this is like not normal.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was that experience. Um,
Wow.
yeah. And then after
So much.
that, I kept saying like, but what's going to be the birth control plan? And people were like, Kylie, but you just need to like let yourself recover now. And I was like, the birth control plan, people, it's still going to be a thing. But so I ended up using fertility awareness method and spermicide and Queen Anne's lace. And then
Okay.
once, well, I like 6 months later, I I ovulated. I thought I ovulated. I had all the signs of ovulation, but
Uh-huh.
I did not ovulate, and I ovulated later than I thought I did. And
Okay.
so I still use spermicide. I still was like tracking everything,
Yeah.
but I didn't use the Queen Anne's lace. And but I kept testing negative on a pregnancy test. So finally I went to get blood work to just see if that would be more clear. And it was clear. I just had ovulated later than I thought I did. So that happened. Um, and this is a real whirlwind because on the one hand, I know my body can heal and I know my body is wise. And I know that um, there's no logical reason why I should trust medical providers to have my best interests of my health or my baby's health in mind. Sorry to say that so in such an extreme way, but that's how I feel. But at the same time, obviously, my experiences have been extreme. Oh, I'm sorry. In my baby girl birth, uh, um, it was just I mean, as far as they're aware, it was just placental abruption, and which I could look back like it was the exact same like type of bleeding. There was no difference. I felt the same. Also, like I felt fine. I had like that little like moment of like I didn't faint that time. I didn't like black out that this time, but I did feel that like whatever. And I do suspect that that like kick that I felt was maybe like the placenta really rupturing,
Mm.
um, or really separating. I don't know. And the shoulder pain I found out could be a sign of internal bleeding. So I
Oh,
don't know. I don't know,
being with the
but
unknown.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, we've been through so much.
Yes, in a very short period of time.
Yes. As we come to a close, is there anything else you would like to share about your stories?
Um, One thing I've made a lot of peace with is that is not needing to be right by anybody else's standards. I need to do what's best for myself and my health for long term and for my babies. And while it might seem logical that that would obviously, given my history, mean obviously, but also uh, I don't see that there's any kind of like One story to mention was when when I was planning that home birth and I was trying to like prove and get all the information. I ended up going to the one doctor. She's known as the one doctor in all of New York who has permission at her hospital at NYU to have a trial of labor after 2 C-sections. She said, like, I would want you to get this test done and this test done and this done. And if this happens, then this happens and this happens, blah, blah, blah. And I fought with her for an hour and I asked her every single question. And we basically came to, she said, like, listen, I'm not going to risk my license for you. And I said, right. And I'm not going to risk my health for you. And we were like, I'm glad we're in understanding of each other. And she hugged me. And she said to my husband, I wish my medical students ask questions like your wife does. And I thought that to me was the most honest. Like I don't disrespect you for operating within what your license allows you to do. Just don't pretend like that's the best thing for my health. It's not. They're two different things.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. For women that might be listening that would like to be in contact with you in some way, is that possible? And if so, how?
Yeah, I don't check Instagram very often, but I do check it once in a while. And my Instagram is the Mindful Woman 365, the Mindful Woman 365.
Beautiful. And I'll put a link in the show notes. Yes. Well, Chaya, thank you so much for being willing to share here today in this way. I really honor your stories and appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you for listening and witnessing, and I appreciate it.
Yes. Thank you for tuning in today. I hope that you enjoyed this episode of The Heart of the Soul. You can support this podcast by donating to it using the PayPal or Venmo links found in the show notes below. If you have stories that you would like to share on my show, please send me an email through my website. I would love to hear from you. If you would like to work with me one-on-one, please check out my current offerings on birthingnova.love. If you're listening on Spotify, you can now send me a voice message through the link at the bottom of the show notes. Until next time, remember to be brave, be love, be wild, be you, and be the change that you seek for yourself and for the generations to come. Love, 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 love you. Mwah.